It is Friday, October 27th. Let's talk PlayStation. So there's not really a whole lot going on this past week, but there's still a few things that we can talk about. So we'll get into the first one. PS4 Firmware 5.01 is available right now. It improves system performance, so go get that right away. I know the one thing that seems to always happen with firmware updates, even with major ones, is that there's always an error code and it always starts breaking people's PS4s. There's some sort of major issue. So if you have any major issues happening as of recently, hopefully 5.01 will fix anything that you are currently dealing with. And even then, when there's a new firmware update, that just brings another new error code and then another set of problems for people. So it's kind of a catch-22 for some people, which kind of sucks. Anyway, another thing this past week is Insomniac Games was asked on Twitter by a fan, hey, Sunset Overdrive 2 maybe? And they responded by saying, we'd love to, we just need to find a publisher. I thought that I would mention this because, of course, Insomniac has a very deeply rooted history with PlayStation. Of course, they're responsible for Ratchet & Clank, Resistance, and they still have a great working relationship with Sony today, obviously. But Sunset Overdrive was just that one game that got away, and a lot of people really enjoy that game. A lot of people like it a lot, and it was a totally awesome game. Totally Insomniac, right? Colorful, fun, enjoyable, humorous. It was just another great game from them. Which, funny enough, when Insomniac did go totally independent, a few of the games that they released afterwards actually weren't really doing all that well. But Sunset Overdrive is always funny to talk about because, especially at the time that they released that game, and we did a few videos on that subject, there was the idea of like, all right, well, what's the actual contract here for what they did with the game in Microsoft? Because that's the big problem with a lot of deals that Microsoft does and any other console manufacturer, which is that what is the actual terms of the game's exclusivity? A lot of the time, it's a timed exclusive, so it can come to another platform after a certain amount of time. Although sometimes Microsoft can seal that first game, pretty tight to the point where the game cannot go anywhere else, right? So, and Insomniac was never totally. I remember at the time, Insomniac was never totally clear about that. They would always just say it's exclusive, it's exclusive, it's exclusive, which you'd think, oh, okay, but it's it doesn't matter because that's always the same PR answer for any game that is usually tied up in a contract like that. They can never come out and admit right away like, oh, but the game will come to another platform after a year time, or they just can't talk about the terms. So we're always kind of wondering if it will end up coming to PS4, and sure enough, it never did. So that means that game was pretty much locked down tight with Microsoft, and that's fine. But the great thing about what Insomniac did at that time, and it's still been their attitude to this day, which is that Insomniac wants to stay independent. They don't want to they want to own their own games. So despite the fact that Sunset Overdrive is stuck on Xbox One, they still retain the IP to Sunset Overdrive, and they can make a sequel and release it anywhere that they want. So certainly Sony could publish the next one, or any other publisher can pick it up. EA, for example. I mean, EA published their one game Fuse, and maybe they published something else, I don't remember off the top of my head. But this is an opportunity for Sunset Overdrive 2 to possibly, release on PlayStation 4 if it were to become a thing. Because as of right now, it sounds like Insomniac has an interest in pursuing a sequel, but nobody is looking at it, or they probably haven't even started developing the game or anything like that, right? They're just kind of saying it on Twitter casually. But much like Titanfall, where at the time Respawn just took forever to finally tell us that original game was a lifetime exclusive, we did end up getting Titanfall 2. The recent release of Cuphead, that game's doing phenomenally well, and they were very open and was saying right away this game is a lifetime exclusive on Xbox One console exclusivity. Mind you, the game is also available on PC, but they do still retain the rights to Cuphead. So if they were to do a sequel, which the game is doing so well, right? That studio is totally going to do another Cuphead. That can come to PlayStation 4, which would be pretty cool. And so, just like Sunset Overdrive, we can see a sequel. Now it's just a matter of if they will find a publisher and if they actually start developing the game. So for our final news story, this is in regards to PlayStation Vita. We don't talk about Vita too much, but I think this one's certainly very interesting. Anyway, NAS America's Alan Costa was speaking with MCV about PlayStation Vita and PS Vita's dwindling market, and he had this interesting quote I'd like to share with you all. So in regard to PS Vita's market, he said, "We will see that when we release games on Vita, we have a fan base that's there, and they get it and they love it. But as a whole, it's not really the place to be right now. The PS Vita is obviously on its way out, and the Switch is very, very strong. One thing in particular that makes it strong is that it has that handheld function. So going forward as a company, we want to target PS4, Steam, and Switch, because over the next 2 years, the Switch market is only going to grow and become stronger. Now, if you've been watching for a while on this channel and these videos, you know, anytime we do talk about PlayStation Vita, it's kind of the same thing I always tell you guys, but it's always the truth in and out, which is that while the Vita has not sold nearly as many, you know, numbers as Sony would have liked, developers still thrive on that platform. You know, the attach rate for Vita owners is quite high, so every time, you know, a game comes out on PlayStation Vita, the owners love the games, right? So people buy games on the platform despite the fact that it really has not sold that many units. And that's why these small-time developers who have small resources, small teams, small budgets, they can release a game on Vita and actually make a very good amount of money, and that's why games still consistently release on Vita, which has always been great. That's always been the awesome thing about Vita. The unfortunate reality of this news story has really opened my eyes to the fact that we are finally probably getting to like that point where Vita is probably going to finally be like he said, right, on its way out. And we don't, you know, it's funny because for the last 3-4 years now, people have been saying Vita's dead, Vita's dead, Vita's a failure, Vita's a failure. And it's like, well, not really, because it's still being manufactured and games still get released for it consistently. And you know, speaking of it, here's NIS. NIS releases tons of fucking games on Vita. They have been a huge supporter for that platform. I mean, if you've got a PlayStation Vita, chances are you've got a goddamn NIS game on it. You know, there's a lot of great stuff on it. So it's like, for the past how many years people have been saying it's dead, but it's like, no, actually, here in 2017, going into 2018, now might finally be the time where it will, you know, have a real tough problem staying relevant. I mean, if you were to check Vita sales now they're like, it's really bottoming out, excuse me. Whereas even just last year, it was still doing quite well in Japan, but nowadays it's looking rough. And that's what is even more eye-opening with what Alan said in that quote, which is that the Switch is actually a great platform for, you know, them to start focusing on in regards to Vita, because that is that relation, and it's something I've always said for a while, which is that Switch is awesome. Like, if you love PlayStation Vita, I don't know how you don't like the Switch. It's a dream machine. It's basically a Vita 2, the Vita 2 that Sony probably will never pursue or never make, which Sony has admitted they are not going to pursue another handheld. I think Nintendo really got it right with not only creating a machine that is a bit of a hybrid, so you can play it on the TV or you can play it on the go, but it's also a great machine if you are somebody that vehemently loves Vita. It's got the power. It's got a great screen. Of course, you're going to have Nintendo's amazing first party on it, but the platform already has some great third party support, which is rare for Nintendo. And that's the one problem Nintendo's always had as a platform holder, is third party support. You don't buy a Nintendo machine to play the next Call of Duty, the next Assassin's Creed. You buy the next Nintendo machine to play a Kirby, a Zelda, a Mario, a Pokemon. But funny enough, you've got those things right, and now you're getting these small independent games that we've constantly seen on Vita, which I think is great, because that's the thing for me. I know a lot of people that own a Switch and they they play it docked with the Pro controller and all that. I say honestly, I screw that, dude. I love playing that thing handheld. I just think it's awesome just to lay in bed, and it's got that beautiful screen. So it's like, I'm not trying to sit here and be like, oh, this, fuck Vita and buy a Nintendo. I'm not trying to endorse Nintendo, but it's like, I think they got that machine right. And if you were somebody that really enjoyed PlayStation Vita, you might start to realize that the system did as much as it could for the last 5 years now, which is, let's face it, that's actually the life cycle that you would expect. It's not extra longer, and it's not substantially shorter. It's 5 years is 5 years, right? That's about the median. And despite the fact that it really trudged for those years, it still had a great library, but it is at that point, I think 2018 is going to be a really tough year, and I would not be surprised if in 2018 Sony announces manufacturing has ceased, because they're just not making any of them anymore. And they've admitted time and time again, the focus is away from Vita. They are focusing straight up on PlayStation 4. They will probably cease manufacturing. I don't know. I wouldn't say relatively soon, but I would be baffled if the machine could somehow still get manufactured throughout all of 2018. I think it's coming up close. And if you're gonna miss PS Vita, I'm just saying Switch might be a good platform to. It's the Vita 2 we'll probably never get, which sucks. But hey, it's here, and you can get that at least. Those are just some of the news stories that I wanted to talk about with you guys this week. So if you did not remember, October 30th, Paris Games Week, Sony's going to be having their press conference. So it's going to be 7:30 a.m. PT, 10:30 a.m. EST, and then it's 3:30 p.m. BST. But keep that in mind. And I'm like 80-90% sure we'll, as always, do. I'll be watching it. I'll be live tweeting with you guys, and I will film a recap and impressions video that will go up as quickly as I can, covering the whole event. What's funny is that a few people within Sony are kind of saying, like, oh yeah, this is going to be a good show. It's going to have a lot of stuff. And I'm wondering what, because that's just been my concern since this year's E3, which is that Sony's finally blew their load on what a lot of their developers are doing, a lot of game announcements. So I'm like pretty concerned with what's going to be happening for their next 3-4 press conferences. So we got Paris Games Week, then we'll have PSX in December, and then we'll go into E3 next year, and I think that's still going to be a major concern as well. But just keep that in mind. October 30th, Monday, that will be going down in Motown. So you better check out this channel when we get that video up. It'll be fun. And follow me on Twitter at Mystic Ryan if you would like to stick with me with some cool live tweeting action. Anyway, that concludes this week's episode of Let's Talk PlayStation. I'm Ryan Benecki. Thank you all so much for talking with me, and I will see you guys next Friday.